you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. So we jump onto the matter of the economy. For about a 10-year high, inflation rate has risen from about 22% to 24.08%. That's about 1.29 points. And that is worrying, considering the fact that since the removal of subsidy on petrol in Nigeria, the statement made by President Bola Tinubu on his very first day in office that triggered a lot of shocks on the economic system in the country. And today, the government is telling Nigerians that there shall be no more increase in the petrol price. Take a listen to the spokesperson of the president, Ajuri Ngelale, earlier today.
Very recently, from the organized labor movement in the country with respect to their most recent threat. We believe that the threat was premature and that there is a need on all sides to ensure that fact-finding and diligence is done on what the current state of the downstream and midstream petroleum industry is before any threats or conclusions are arrived at or issued. Secondly, Mr. President wishes to assure Nigerians, following the announcement by the NNPC Limited just yesterday, that there will be no increase in the pump price of petroleum motor spirit anywhere in the country.
All right, then. So this means a lot, isn't it? Because that statement means one thing if you say that the market forces will be determining the price, and when government and NNPCL saying that at some point that our hands are off the table, we cannot control the price, but now the government and the NNPCL says there shall be no more increase in the pump price of petrol. What does this mean? Let's get an expert to give us insight into this. Mr. Johnson Chukwu is the founder of Carriers and Management Company and Economist, joins us live from New York. Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwu, for joining us tonight on the program.
Thank you for having me, Sion.
Yeah. So, and I'll start from that before I go to the issue of the inflation rate. Now, the statement coming from the spokesperson of the president that there will be no increase in petrol. Does this mean that subsidy is coming back through the back door?
Exactly. That's exactly what it means. It simply means that as it stands today, the market forces that we are supposed to be determining the price of petrol has been suspended. And it's also the more one aspect of it that the pains we've gone through to eliminate subsidy has actually been for nothing if we are suspending those factors. I think what the government should have done is to address the reason why we are seeing such jump in petrol price, which is basically the issue of exchange rate. You cannot allow two variables to move at the same time. The appropriate thing would have been if we had government had been able to have a hang on the exchange rate, then we would have been dealing with market movement, global market changes in the price of petroleum products, that's crude and refined petroleum product, plat. And then we would have been dealing with marginal increments and marginal decreases in the price of petroleum products. But what has happened now is that because exchange rate has moved from about 400 or something when the exchange rate was harmonized to almost 1,000 naira, we've seen such increase in the landing price cost of fuel that even at the pump price today, it no longer covers the price of importing fuel. So what that means is that the government has reintroduced subsidy, and then the pain we have gone to move the price of fuel from about 200 naira to more than 600 naira has been for nothing. And that, for me, is a great of great concern.
Would you call it policy somersault or government hypocrisy? How would you describe it?
Well, what else can you call it? It's more, I think policy somersault is more apt. But the key thing, like I said, that the decision to deregulate the downstream sector and the decision to harmonize the exchange was not properly thought through. And the fact is that, and I've said it at different fora, the government should have prepared very well to ensure that when they harmonize the exchange rate, we achieve some level of exchange rate stability and not the drastic depreciation we've seen in the past couple of weeks. And that's why, like I also said in those fora, that once you begin to see a depreciation in the local currency, you're going to see landing price, landing cost of imported fuel at a price that will compel pump price to continue to be adjusted upwards. And that's what we saw. But now, the government saying that they will no longer allow prices to increase simply means if Platt increases beyond the current level, the government has absorbed the difference. If exchange rate depreciates further, the government has absorbed the difference. In effect, the government has reintroduced subsidy. So if you have moved subsidy away and Nigerians have taken this pain over the past couple of weeks and you are reintroducing subsidy, then it simply means the pain we've gone through has been for nothing.
Now, so a lot of things have happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are the expert here. I see a lot of speculation and a lot of panic in the market, which has affected Forex. It has affected consumption. It has affected pricing of commodities in the market. Government is struggling and battling to control these forces. Government wanted to control things. It manually wanted to re-enter into the market. Things are boomeranging every day, and it looks like a bull in the China shop. Is that the situation we find ourselves? How do we calm the situation? No cabinet yet. We have the minister designate, but they have not been officially inaugurated. If you were President Tinubu, with a situation that looks like our economy is in jitter and is dancing hip-hop in the fastest mode that it can, where do we go from here, Mr. Chukwu?
Well, we start by addressing the mistakes we made. The first mistake was that, like I said earlier, the decision to announce the removal of subsidy and as the decision to harmonize the exchange was done without thinking through it. A couple of things needed to have been done. Let's start from the issue of removing the subsidy. The previous government had planned to take out the subsidy, and they were mitigating measures that were supposed to put in place before the subsidy was removed. One of which the government had planned to bring in 1,000 buses, about 20 per state capital, to distribute in all the 6 states of the country and Abuja to reduce the cost of transportation impact of subsidy removal. The government had a plan to introduce the issue of CNG powered vehicles. Some of these measures should have preceded the subsidy removal. Now, the current government has come up with, they're going to bring in 3,000 CNG-driven buses. But if you take time to manufacture those buses when you place the order. So I don't see any of those buses coming here earlier than 9 months to 1 year. At that point, the damage on the economy would have taken place, would have already happened. So that's as it relates to the subsidy removal. Measures should have been taken before the subsidy was removed. As harmonizing the exchange rate, the first thing that the government should have done was take stock of the arrears of unmet demand. Matured letters of credit had not been negotiated, payments due to the airlines had not been paid. Then payments would due to or bids for Forex by foreign portfolio investors that sold their Nigerian instrument that wanted to exit. They would have taken stock of that and arrived at maybe is it $10 billion, is it $20 billion, and then provision would have been made that at the point when you harmonize the exchange rate and harmonize the higher rate, you would have provided to take care of those arrears of unmet demand. That would have calmed the market, because what would have happened was the market would have had a feeler the government or the central bank had the capacity to meet obligations that they fall due. The problem was that when the exchange was harmonized and those who had arrears of unmet demand had to lock in exchange losses, and you have seen many companies report huge exchange losses, still they were not able to access Forex to clear those arrears, and that said panic. That made them move into panic mode, because if you have lost about 40% of your naira value in dollar terms, and then you really can't still access that funding from the central bank to be able to meet that obligation, you will want to access Forex at the exchange rate. And then when this will move to the parallel market to exchange exchange rate, the demand in the parallel market outweighed the supply in the parallel market, and then we began to see the currency depreciate. So you have to retrace your steps and say what went wrong and where did we get it wrong? And once we can do this articulation, we can now decide. The first thing we need to do is that the federal government or the central bank, of course, when you talk of the federal government and the central bank, listen, I have to use them as if they are simultaneous, if they are similar or the same entity, because there's no way the central bank can access funding support without the federal government weight. So the first thing they need to do is that the federal government needs to access funding support, what do you call it, balance sheet support or balance of payment support from maybe the International Monetary Fund or any of the bilateral reserve bank in the world that the government has very good relationship with. Yeah. That we use to clear those areas and restore confidence in the market.
Mr. Chukwu, and this is where the likes of Mr. Wale Edun and Zacchaeus Adedeji, who are working closely with the president, will have to perform magic. All their certificates and their knowledge have to come to bear. I understand that these are fantastic human beings in their own right and they're professionals in their own right. They need to now bring this to bear because the government is trying to make some defense. I'd like you to listen to this, Mr. Chukwu. This is coming from Adams Oshiomhole, a former national chairman of the APC, a former Labour leader, a former governor of Edo State, a sitting senator, who has said that there is an inheritance of a bad economic situation in the country. I'd like you to comment on that. Take a listen to Senator Adams Oshiomhole.
The government inherited a terrible economic situation. Everybody knows it. The government inherited an economy in which our total national revenue was barely enough to service our debt burden, spending 96%, which is to say every 96 kobo, every 100 naira Nigeria earned, 96 kobo is going to repay debts, to service debts. So you have only 4 kobo left to pay all the salaries. So nothing can be worse. But they came determined that they will have to do business unusual to arrest the drift, stabilize the economy.
So, Mr. Chukwu, you hear Senator Oshiomhole speaking as this, and there are some revelations coming out of the CBN about the financial state of the Apex Bank. For 7 years, no financial report. And the things that are coming out of that Apex Bank are mind-boggling. The kind of things that should never be happening. And those who have described it as a firecracker that will engulf our economic situation. Just briefly, because I have one more question for you before we go. That bad situation that we find ourselves for President Tinubu, can he be looking at the past? Well, he needs to focus on the present and the future, isn't it?
Tim, if you recall, it's actually interesting that we're still talking about inheriting bad situation. We spent 8 years pillaging a previous government. The current party in power spent 8 years of our precious time pillaging the previous government and blaming everything and refusing to work to remedy the situation and made the bad situation worse. So, and current government is a continuation of the government of the same party, and none of them can actually exonerate themselves from whatever the current the economic trajectory in Nigeria is in today. I think it beggars logic that at this point we still be talking of we inherited bad situation. The key thing is that when you apply for a job, I mean, the Nigeria's financial economic situation was well known. The current government, the current leadership of the current government was fully part of it. Mr. President, with all due respect, was the leader of the party for 8 years. Was actually instrumental. Actually, it was said that he installed the previous presidency. So I don't think we should, at this point, focus on that. Our priority should be how do we change the narrative as a people, because it affects all of us. But to go back and sit back and all we just do is blame previous government, I don't think we should buy into that. That's very distracting for me, and it's actually annoying that we should still be talking about that when we did that for 8 years and our situation did not change.
Finally, Mr. Chukwu, I just have about less than 60 seconds to go. But let me show you some of these images that we got from the presidency today, and that trying to paint a picture of the drastic situation that have been that are emerging from the consumption and the regulation process in the oil and gas sector. Take, for example, the images are showing that within the West African, the coastal region, it shows that Nigeria oil, gasoline or the petrol sell the lowest, between 568 to 630, compared to areas that are Togo 900, Ghana 875 in Benin Republic, Niger 716, 938 in Cameroon, and the rest. And if you look at it, what thing that actually bothers the mind is that the deregulation period, we were talking about evacuation of about 67 million liters of the product. Now, from June, it went to 49 million. To July, it came down to 45, and in August, 44. There are those who will say to you, fantastic decisions the president has made, although with ill timing that has also orchestrated, has affected it. But the good thing is that they are in the early stages of these administration. But if they want to fix things and get things right, what would be that one thing that they need to do immediately? Don't forget, public perception and the fear factor is already in the market.
Okay, it's actually difficult to answer to say one specific thing that needs to be done. But let me say back to one of the things you said in terms of the pump price of fuel across West African countries. There's what they call purchasing power parity. So if you look at it in dollar terms, it doesn't really convey the whole message. You have to look at what percentage of an average household income is spent on transportation in Benin Republic, in Ghana, in Cotonou, and in Togo and all those countries. And you have to look at the weight of such in for Nigerian household. And then you look at the road network in all those countries. If you want to drive from Lagos to Badagry, it will take you like 6 hours. It's not the same as way in West Africa. But back to what is the one thing that the president has to do? He has to restore confidence in the local currency. They have to stabilize the exchange rate. To stabilize the exchange rate, we will be able to stabilize the pump price of petroleum product. We'll be able to fight inflation or moderate the current inflationary pressure, and we will be able to restore to some extent the purchasing power of average household income, so that Nigerians can.
All right. Thank you so much. Mr. Johnson Chukwu, economics and the founder of Carrier Asset Management, thank you so much for the insight you have given tonight. The president said, I asked for the job, I begged for it, you voted for me, let me do the job. It's a tough one, and we hope that he gets the job done.